Gonna go ahead and try one. Nailed it. These are phenomenal. Today we're making boneless Chinese spare ribs on the rotisserie. Hi, my name's Angelo from KamadoCook.com. If you're new here and want to see more videos like this, hit that subscribe button. If you've been here before, I'm sorry I'm not better looking. I am very excited for today, and that's an understatement. Today we're making boneless Chinese spare ribs on the Joetisserie on the Kamado. The reason I'm so excited is I'm from Connecticut. In Connecticut, we have amazing Chinese food, just like New York. And the go-to Chinese takeout order is boneless spare rib combo platter with an extra egg roll. I live in Texas now because my wife is a Texan through and through. And where we live, about 30 minutes outside of Dallas, you can't find boneless spare ribs anywhere. People don't even know they exist. They think I'm crazy when I ask for it.
What?
Nothing. You stick out like a sore thumb around here.
Me? What about you?
I fit in better than you. At least I'm wearing cowboy boots.
Oh, yeah, you blend. I bet the Chinese food here is terrible.
So I found a recipe on how to make the sauce, how to get the pork ready, and we're gonna do it on the rotisserie, and I am very excited to have a taste of home and, you know, get back to my roots and really enjoy some boneless spare ribs that I've been hunting for a while. So, what we have here is, this is pork shoulder, or pork butt shoulder they call it, and we're gonna cut this up into small, not small, but, you know, cubes like this. We're gonna stack it on the rotisserie, and then we're gonna cook it, and we're gonna cut it as it cooks, just like we did the tacos al pastor. So we need to do two things. One, I need to make the sauce. So if you're not familiar with these boneless spare ribs at the Chinese place, they're bright red, and it's a very sweet sauce, and they're in little strips. And they are, I can't tell you how good they are. They're amazing. So the reason I want to do them on the rotisserie is because at the Chinese places, they put it under a broiler, and well, first they cook it in a wok, and then they put it under a broiler to burn it up a little bit and get some nice crispy pieces. That's exactly what the Joetisserie is gonna do. We're gonna get some nice charred bits, and we're gonna get some nice burnt pieces mixed in with the cooked pork, and it's gonna be awesome. So, we have to make our sauce, and then we're gonna let it marinate overnight, and then tomorrow is when we're gonna actually throw it on. So for now, let's make our sauce, and we'll cut it up, and then we'll go from there. So the sauce is pretty straightforward. I had to buy some things because you're not gonna have all of these things on hand, but I really only had to buy the hoisin sauce and the Chinese 5-spice. Everything else we pretty much had. So, check my notes. We're gonna do a 1/4 cup of hoisin sauce. We're gonna do a 1/4 cup of soy sauce. And a 1/4 cup of honey, which is gonna be really annoying to measure. But we will do our best. Okay, a 1/2 tablespoon of Chinese 5-spice. This is obviously something that I don't have on hand, so I had to grab it. It was like a few bucks at Kroger. These are common ingredients in the Asian food section of the grocery store, so it shouldn't be too hard to find. So a 1/2 teaspoon of Chinese 5-spice and a 1/2 teaspoon of garlic salt. And then finally, because this is very sweet, 3 tablespoons of regular white granulated sugar. Okay, now we mix. So we made our sauce, and I mix it and I put it off to the side. This is about 3 pounds of pork. So I told you this is pork shoulder center cut. It's very marbled. We have a good amount of fat, so I don't need to tenderize this. In Chinese, for Chinese cooking, what they do to tenderize meat quite a bit is they do something called velveting. So when they velvet meat, they'll take like a tablespoon of baking soda to a quarter cup of water, and then they'll mix the meat in with that, and that really tenderizes the meat. You let it sit for 20 minutes, and you'll take what was a pretty rough, chewy, tough cut of meat, and you've tenderized it fairly quickly. If you have, you know, a piece of pork that doesn't have good marbling, you know it's going to be a tough piece of pork, then do that. Velvet. It's called velveting. Velvet it. 1 tablespoon of baking soda to a quarter cup of water. Just mix it up, put it on the pork, put it in a bowl, let it sit for 20 minutes, and then rinse the hell out of it, and then pick up where we are now, right? Make your sauce and cut this up and do the rest of it. If you're not using a rotisserie, so we have a Kamado Joe, we're using the Joetisserie. If you're not using a rotisserie, you can do this in a wok, you can do this on a griddle, you can do this a million different ways. In your case, you're gonna wanna slice these first into little small strips. In my case, we're slicing them as it cooks, so we're gonna leave these, you know, pretty much whole. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna get this ready for the spit. And what I wanna do is cut these into even sizes, about this big. So, I don't know, about a length's width, or a knife's length. So that's, I don't know, 4 inches, something like that. And the most important part, the exact size isn't as important as them being even are, because on the rotisserie, we want it to be even, right? We don't want it like all jagged, like a, you know, a mess. We want it to be nice and even. So I'm gonna cut these into even size pieces. And it's okay if you have some small ones. I'd rather have some that are too small than some that are too big, because the small ones will go in between, and when they're ready to cut, we'll cut them. Where if they're too big, then those pieces are gonna burn up. So like these small pieces, we're just gonna put it aside, it's fine. The other ones, we're gonna cut, make them nice and even. Okay, so we've got this cut up into pretty even pieces. Some are not, but it's okay. They're gonna get stacked up on the rotisserie all the same. And like I said, when you do this, it's important that they're at least as close as possible. They don't have to all be exactly the same, but you don't want some pieces that are way bigger than others, because again, those are gonna cook faster and those are gonna burn, and it's gonna be a pain for you to manage all this. So for now, all we're gonna do is wait. We're marinating. So we're gonna take our sauce and put it in this Ziploc bag with our pork. Getting all my hands dirty. Oh yeah. Oh, actually, one more thing. Some people add red food coloring. It does nothing for the flavor, but traditionally this is bright red. So, you know, let's just add the food coloring and make this look as official as possible. And you're gonna do a whole little 12-cent container of food coloring. Oh yeah. Oh, that's very red. Okay, so let's get this mixed in. We'll get the air out. And now we're just gonna wanna cover these. Make sure your bag is sealed. We're gonna wanna cover these, coat them well. You see how deep red that is? That's what it looks like. We are in for a treat. So this is just gonna go in the fridge for 24 hours. And then tomorrow, we'll take it out, we'll load up the rotisserie, we'll get our fire started, and we'll go ahead and cook these. So I will see you again tomorrow. Okay. We have let our meat marinate overnight, and I've got my fire going. So you see here I have the kick-ass basket and the basket divider. I have banked my coals. Again, I'm doing about 3/4 and 1/4, and I've banked my coals to one side. And that's so when we're doing the rotisserie, the meat gets a little bit of a break coming over this way, and it helps prevent some flare-ups. If this does get out of control and if this does start flaring up, I'm just gonna put a heat deflector on this side, and that will help. That'll help with that. You see I have my accessory rack in here. We've taken out the big, what holds, you know, your heat deflectors and your grill grates. We had to take that out for the Joetisserie, but I have put my X accessory rack in. And the reason I did that is because as we shave the meat, we're gonna take this off, we're gonna shave the meat into a tin foil container. but sometimes it might be a little raw, or maybe I want a little more crisp, and I'm just gonna put that tinfoil container right here to cook that stuff. Now what I wanna do is I wanna get my rod ready. So you see here, there's a little square, and the end of this rod is square. So we're just gonna get this lined up, and we're gonna plop it in. And now what I wanna do is I wanna find the center, and then that's when I'll lock this in. So this is locked in center, and now we can take this out and we can go ahead and load it up in the kitchen. It's been 24 hours and our meat is ready to go. Now, what we need to do is load up the spit, our stick. So I just showed you how to get this ready. We wanna plop this in and we wanna line this to center so that we're not fidgeting with it and trying to mess with the screws while our hands are disgusting with all this stuff on it. So what we need to do is take these pieces of pork out. This is messy, which is why I have tin foil down, and we're gonna do it over a container because this is a mess. So let's open this up, and we're just gonna do this one piece at a time. And it's very easy. Just take it out and throw it down. And we wanna make this as even as we possibly can, so center of meats, we work it down, and then we're good. And we're just gonna keep doing this until it is loaded up entirely. And we may have some loose pieces, and if so, we will just, like right here, we'll just click this on here, slide it down, and try to get it nice and even. So the goal here is get everything on, get it even, and then we can load it up. So let's just get this loaded. We've got this loaded up. We have a few pieces that are hanging a little bit, and that's okay. They'll cook faster, and maybe we'll cut them with the kitchen shears to get them into the pan. So we've got this loaded up. Now we're gonna put on our other end, and we're just gonna tighten it. We want this nice and tight, okay? So let's just tighten this bolt. We want this meat nice and tight. As it cooks, it'll shrink. So throughout the cook, we may need to tighten it a bit, but we're just gonna throw this on. We'll let it cook, and we're gonna shave it down as the ends get done. It gets a little tricky with the prongs in the way, but you know, we'll figure it out as we go. It's not that big of a deal. We've done this many, many times. So let's go ahead. We'll go back outside and we'll get this on the rotisserie. We've already lined it up, so now we just have to slide it in. Don't take too long because this fire is hot. All right, we've got it on, and now we just flip the switch, and we're gonna let it start spinning. So I'm gonna close this lid because I don't want this fire to flare up. We are at 450 in the dome. The neighbors are having their Christmas lights taken down, and I've probably done 10 takes of this already between the leaf blower and the ladder. So hopefully this one sticks. We are at 450 in the dome, and that's a great temperature to make sure the meat gets cooked, but also enough heat to get a little bit of char on the outside. If you are too hot, you're just gonna burn the outside and the pork's gonna be raw. And if you're too low, you'll never get that char. It's gonna take forever, and it's just, you know, it's not gonna be that nice texture that you want from this cook. So I don't have any smoking wood in here. We're just gonna use the natural flavors of the charcoal, and we're gonna use, you know, that ambient heat to really cook this. 450, because this is not a complete airtight seal, you see there's some smoke coming out of the sides here because this isn't the normal locking mechanism setup. 450 is actually a little tighter than usual. So I'm 1.5 notches on the top, and the bottom is about 3 fingers. So it's not completely wide open, which is what you would normally expect for a 450 or 500. So we're just gonna let this go. We're gonna need to use a few different things for this cook. So one, we absolutely 100% need high heat gloves because we're going to grab that rod, take it out, rest it in an aluminum foil pan, and cut the outside that's cooked, and then we're gonna put it back on. You cannot do that without some high heat gloves. I'll put a link in the description. They're very cheap, and these ones I like because some people would say, oh, welding gloves work well. Yeah, welding gloves do work when we're protecting from heat, but I'm touching food, and I don't want that food coloring and any of the liquid or juices from the food to get in leather welding gloves. That's gross, and they're gonna be disgusting, and I just don't want that touching food. These are washable. They're, I don't know, they're not rubber because they don't melt, but you know, it's washable and nothing sticks, and these are great. The other thing you're gonna want is your sort of fire poker, or whatever you wanna call this, to make sure your fire's even. Because we're rotating, and I can't just like grab the rotisserie, flip it over and put it back in. If we have too much of a fire on the left or the right, that side's gonna cook way faster and potentially too fast. So we want this, as my fire was coming up, I was moving everything around to make sure it's a nice even fire all the way through. And then you need a nice sharp knife so that we can cut the outside layers of this cooked meat. Okay, we're ready for our first cut. So let me go ahead and get this off, and then we'll do our first shave and get it right back on. And now you see why we need these high heat gloves. So I'm just gonna cut the outermost layer here and work our way down, making sure not to cut too deep because obviously we don't want to get raw pork in here. Okay, so we shaved our first layer. Now what we need to do is we do need to tighten it up a bit because as it cooks, it shrinks and it loosens up. So we need it nice and tight for shaving. Otherwise, it's just gonna get, you're just gonna be pushing it instead of cutting it. So that's why these high heat gloves are so important. And that's why I mentioned before, I like these rubber ones. I just touch the food and it's sitting on the glove and I'm just gonna wash the gloves and that's it. If I was using welding gloves, it would be disgusting. So we pretty much got this outer layer. I don't want to cut too much because I don't want to end up with some raw. See, right there, that would have been raw. So let's just get this back on. I like the charred bits, so I don't mind some pieces with the black. So we'll get this back on, and we're just going to continue this process over and over. So if I take a look in here, we want to make sure there's no raw pieces. And it looks like my shave was good, and none of this was raw. If I did have some raw pieces, that's when I would just slide this back on, let this get hot, and it would just cook these. So right now, it's going well. The process is working. I'm gonna go ahead and try one. Nailed it. These are phenomenal. I can't wait. We're just gonna keep doing this. We're gonna keep cutting as we go. And and then I'm gonna eat 3 pounds of boneless spare ribs by myself because this is too good to share. So just keep going and shave away. So you can see there's not much left and there's definitely not enough to do a full shave. So what we need to do is put it back on because it's still raw in the middle, so it still has to cook. But when we're done, we're gonna take it off entirely and just chop it up. So a couple quick things that should be helpful. One, when you're cutting it, try to remember to close the lid because if you leave the lid open for that minute or 2 minutes or whatever it is, your fire might get too big. And that happened to me where I forgot to close it and then my fire skyrocketed, and got pretty big. I caught it, I realized it, I closed my vents a little bit and it was no big deal, but you gotta keep an eye on your temperature to make sure that it doesn't go wild. Check on it every now and then to make sure there's not some crazy flare-ups. Although I do like, some of these burnt pieces, so I don't mind flare-ups when we're doing something like this, but you wanna make sure it doesn't get out of control. And again, close the lid while you're cutting, otherwise that fire will get too big and too hot, and cooling these things down is much harder than heating them up. So we're gonna finish this last rotation, I'm gonna cut them up, and then we're done. So this is an easy, unbelievably tasty cook. I've been feasting. We had like 3.5 pounds on there, and I don't know how much is left, but not a lot because I've just been eating like crazy while waiting for this to go. It's phenomenal. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm happy to help. And check out KamadoCook.com. We have a live chat feature, so if you have any questions for me or anybody else that's on our team, hit us up 24/7 and we'll get back to you. If you're in the middle of a cook or have a question for the next day, whatever it is, we'll get back to you. We're all sort of, just looking to help and do what we can. Again, easy, straightforward. We made our marinade, which I'll put in the description. We made our marinade, we marinated it overnight, we cut the pork into even pieces, put it on the skewer, and we rotated it at 450 to 500, and we shaved as we went. You need high heat gloves, you need a really sharp knife, but other than that, it's an easy, straightforward cook. If you don't have a rotisserie, you can do this, follow my exact same recipe for the flavor, cut it into small strips, do it in like a cast iron skillet, like to cook them, and then throw it under the broiler to get that black, crispy pieces on some of the edges. But all in all, you're gonna love it. If you have any questions, let me know. This is the most excited I've ever been for a cook. I appreciate the watch, and we'll see you soon.